Welcome back to Sport on 7. So we've seen diving, cricket, and the announcement that the Abu Dhabi F1 tickets are now on sale. By the way, with that, don't forget there is an early bird offer. If you book by the end of May, you'll get 20% off. But there has been plenty of other stories in sport over the last 7 days. Myself and Chris McHardy once again got together to chat about the big ones. Well, once again, so much has happened in the last 7 days in sport around the UAE and, of course, around the Middle East in general as well. Chris McHardy from Sport 360 joining me once again. And let's start with the UAE football team in action for, of course, the qualifiers ahead of the Asian Cup happening in 2015 in Australia. And it's 2 wins out of 2 for the UAE.
It is indeed, Tom, and a wonderful victory as well against a side Uzbekistan 39 places above them in the FIFA rankings. But Mahdi Ali's men, we've talked about them in length on the show a number of times over the past few weeks. They just continue going. As I keep saying, I repeat myself, a talented young side, and against an Uzbek side who came here in high in confidence themselves. You know, they're a good side at this level, but the UAE 13 wins now, unbeaten. It's 13 games rather, unbeaten for Mahdi Ali's men. Just that one defeat coming in his first game in charge against Japan. They fell behind on the night, but they showed remarkable character, if you will, without Omar Abdulrahman as well. A great victory, and they march on. It's 2 wins from 2, as you rightly point out. All speed ahead for Australia in 2015.
That'll give them confidence as well, won't it? Of course, beating Uzbekistan, who really are the favourites to top that group. So that will give them confidence, and they did it without their star man, Omar Abdulrahman.
They did indeed. I mean, Omar Abdulrahman, the namesake of Omar, he was absolutely superb on the evening. The little centre midfielder from Bani Yas, absolutely brilliant. He dictated things in the middle of the park. And I guess the interesting thing with this, with beating Uzbekistan, who had a disappointing draw in their opening game, they've now really opened up a gap from Uzbekistan. Of course, it is the top 2 of the 4-team group that goes through to the finals. And with Hong Kong, the real surprise package, they had a late winner against Vietnam. They're on 4 points now. UAE topped the group on 6 points. And as I say, with that back-to-back games against Hong Kong at the end of this year, you'd fancy 2 wins there, and they're already booked their place in Australia.
Of course, it's not just the UAE in action to get to Australia in 2015. Plenty of teams around the Middle East taking part. Lebanon, of course, want to get there as well.
They have indeed, Tom. In Lebanon, of course, the scandal with which has hit Lebanese football in the past few weeks, of course, you may recall 24 players indicted in that match-fixing scandal. But Theo Bucker, who we've spoken to at great length, he admits his future is still in doubt. He was hugely disappointed with the revelations that came out of there. But a great victory for them, a 5-2 victory against Thailand on the night, which continues their fine form, of course, reaching the last stage of the World Cup qualifying for 2014 for the first time in their history. So a 5-2 win, it kind of puts the feel-good factor back into Lebanese football after what has been a tough few weeks. So yeah, great result for them. And I guess the other one, Bahrain beating Qatar as well, that was an interesting one on the night. But as I say, the headlines from our point of view, it's all to do with the UAE, full steam ahead for Australia. And you know, who knows, as we said last week, they're climbing in the FIFA World Rankings, and they could land down under one of the favourites to win the tournament.
Absolutely, it will be an exciting tournament, that's for sure. And you touched on Qatar there, and let's talk about them. Last week, of course, we mentioned the Dream Football League, which was linked to Qatar. The likes of Barcelona and Manchester United being paid something like $170 million to go and appear in a summer league every 2 years, but really, it was never going to happen, was it?
Well, no, Tom, I think that's the simple answer. It was, the Times who ran the story initially. They came out and said, listen, guys, we made a massive mistake. We were duped. Of course, you may recall last week we mentioned that the story actually originated from this satirical French website, and the Times were, as they admittedly so, were duped by it all. Of course, the Qatar Football Association came out and said there is no interest there. This Dream Football League that had the premise of it was that 24 teams, of course, would come out here for pots of gold, but it's not the case. The Times have refusely apologised the story. They say they were duped. They say, and I quote, a massive mistake on their part. The story's dead. Will we see the clubs come out here in a league in the future? Who knows, with the way football is moving at these times. Money talks as the way it always does in these kind of things. But right now, no, there's no story there, and we wait and see the developments in the future, whether these big teams come out to Qatar for any competitive matches.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, it could happen in the future, having a competitive football match here from the Premier League. Of course, we had 6 or so Premier League clubs out here, didn't we, recently, training. Harry Redknapp and QPR were one of those teams. Harry Redknapp certainly would be up for the idea of having a game out here, and, well, who can blame him when the weather is like this? Let's stay with Qatar just for a second, because, of course, that tournament might not be happening, but one that definitely is happening is the World Cup in 2022. But when is it going to happen? In the summer or the winter? Well, Qatar have finally come out and said they'd be open to a Winter World Cup.
They have indeed, Tom, and of course this is a story. Michel Platini, the UEFA president, he was really the first one, and he's been outspoken on this as well. He does believe that it should be in the winter, simply because of obviously the soaring heats, as we all know in this region, can get upwards of 50 degrees Celsius. And Qatar have admitted, as you rightly point out, for the first time, listen, we are open to this Winter World Cup idea. Now, of course, the other idea that Michel Platini touted, was that this Gulf World Cup, that some of the games could in actual fact be staged in the likes of UAE, Kuwait, etc. But Qatar have said, listen, we solely went in there with the intent of hosting the World Cup ourselves. They say that remains the case. But they are open to this Winter World Cup. Now, in the statement that they released on Friday, they did say, listen, the cooling systems with which they want to implement in stadiums, that is going to happen. They want to implement that thing, and they believe that it is sustainable. The things, the cooling system that they enter will be sustainable. Now, the question that kind of leads to is whether FIFA will be convinced that it actually is. Now, Qatar have said, listen, if you're not convinced, then we will look to this Winter World Cup, which would of course mean a number of leagues across Europe and the world changing their structure in the lead up to that World Cup, because simply the likes of the Premier League doesn't have currently a winter break. Now that there's loads of questions that need to be answered on that front, but yes, I guess the big story from this week, Qatar open to a Winter World Cup.
Yes, absolutely. Well, of course, we mentioned the World Cup. Let's talk about another World Cup, the Dubai World Cup. Not football, of course. We're now talking horse racing. It's happening later on this week. At the weekend, it's going to be another fantastic, of course, race, the richest horse race in the world. And, well, for Monterosso, last year's winner, he's going to have a few rivals this time around, isn't he?
He is indeed, Tom. 13 for 2013 is what I've styled it as. There's 13 riders going to be in, as you rightly point out, the world's richest horse race. Monterosso will be going for history, of course, looking to become the first horse to win back-to-back Dubai World Cups. But what a field he's up against. I guess the big name, Hunter's Light, who of course won Super Saturday up at Meydan just a couple of weeks ago. He leads outside Bin Sarour's companion. 3 horses there. African Story, the other one in Cassiano as well. And I guess the other one from the other kind of competitor, if you will, that will look to try and steal Monterosso's title is its stablemate Caprione. Now, that is another horse that will look to do well on Dubai World Cup night. But really, the big one, the favourite from many people in the game that I'm speaking to, is certainly keep your eye on Hunter's Light, a horse that's coming into this race in fine form with that victory on Super Saturday. Can Monterosso do it? Right now, if you ask me, I would say no, but listen, the history's there to be done, and fingers crossed it will be a great night, and it is a great night. We all know it's a social event. It's one of the social events on the calendar that we all go to. I'll be making sure that I'm suited and booted for that evening. It's a wonderful event, and let's hope so that the action on the track matches the action, which I'm sure will be an enjoyable one off the track as well.
Yeah, Sport on 7 next week will be from the Dubai World Cup up at Meydan. It will be a fantastic Saturday afternoon, of course. And Chris, you say there you're going to be suited and booted. It's hard to imagine that right now, but maybe a haircut as well?
Certainly a haircut, Tom. That's the first thing on my to-do list ahead of that Dubai World Cup, of course. It's not just the sports enthusiasts, all the socialites, the fashionistas will be there, so I need to be certainly sure that this Barnet, shall we say, is looking a lot tidier for Super Saturday, which is the Dubai World Cup.
Well, if you don't get it cut, you might be mistaken for one of those horses competing, but we're looking forward to the World Cup next Saturday anyway. Chris McHardy from Sport 360, thank you once again, and we'll see you next week. That's it for Sport on 7 this week. Next week, you'll find us at Meydan for the Dubai World Cup, the richest horse race in the world. Until then, I'm Tom Bushell. Goodbye.